Guess what? I'm going to be governor of Ohio!
Florida is open for business.
And we will make a fabulous team for New Mexico.
I promise you I'm going to work very hard for the people of Pennsylvania.
In the election of 2010, a wave of Republican legislators and governors were swept in, touting job creation and balanced budgets. However, once in office, they pushed an education reform agenda focused on overtesting, privatization, and devastating budget cuts. This is the story of how two different AFT affiliates, facing two very different challenges, are reclaiming the promise.
The Boston Consulting Group came in and is calling the shots. They didn't talk to the parents. They didn't talk to the employees in the schools.
In Philadelphia in 2012, a business consulting firm introduced a privatization plan that would result in massive school closures and thousands of educator layoffs. Combined with Governor Corbett's $1.1 billion cuts in education, schools were reduced to the bare bones, which made providing a quality education for Philadelphia children almost impossible.
I think this is the beginning of the end of public education here in Philadelphia.
In New Mexico, the union had a long-standing relationship where they worked collaboratively with the Democratic legislature. But in 2010, newly elected Republican Governor Susana Martinez appointed Hannah Skandera as Secretary of Education.
Is there someone to blame? Absolutely not. This is data.
As a chief for change and a Jeb Bush disciple, she wasted no time in pushing overtesting, value-added teacher evaluations with 50% of the score based on testing, corporate-run virtual schools, and a punitive school grading bill where schools are stigmatized with an A through F grade.
I test these kids all the time. If you add all that up, I'm out of their education for at least a couple months out of the year just testing. And these kids don't need that much testing. They need a teacher in the classroom teaching them skills.
A part of a coalition called PCAPS, the Philadelphia Coalition Advocating for Public Schools.
The Philadelphia Federation of Teachers, realizing that they could not and should not fight this alone, brought together community groups that formed the Philly Coalition Advocating for Public Schools, or PCAPS. They held a series of town halls engaging parents, students, educators, and community members.
I have a vested interest in the future of Philadelphia.
Through the town halls and over 1,600 surveys given to community members, PCAPS developed the Community Education Plan to provide a positive alternative to the privatization and cuts being pushed.
And we are here with you today to say to the SRC and Mayor Nutter that they have to put a moratorium on the school closings and they have to find...
After the school district announced 44 schools slated for closure, PCAPS mobilized on a larger scale, staging public protests and actions, drawing the public's attention to the crisis.
They are willing to get locked up to keep them from coming in here voting on something that's going to hurt thousands of children.
On behalf of 23,000 educators who, after working over 2.5 years with this administration and PED, felt like their voices are being ignored.
After 2 years of constantly battling right-wing education policy proposals, AFT New Mexico realized they couldn't continue to only say no to legislation. Instead, they engaged with the Keep the Promise Coalition to come up with pro-public education alternatives to shift the debate.
Keeping the promise to New Mexico means valuing our children and recognizing them as the best investment in our state.
You just have a closer relationship with your teacher when there's a smaller class size.
Okay.
Through a series of town halls, some broadcast on New Mexico Public Television, they engage community to put forward a collective vision for the future of New Mexico's children.
Schools opened on Monday, and after devastating budget cuts, almost 4,000 teachers and staff were laid off.
At the beginning of the 2013 school year, Governor Corbett held a $45 million grant hostage, demanding concessions from PFT members. His gamesmanship made the severe understaffing in schools even worse. With all school counselors pink-slipped, class sizes of up to 44, greatly reduced sports and music programs, school nurses covering multiple schools, and few crossing guards to help students get to school safely.
My house to Wilson last year, we had 3 crossing guards. This year, we have nothing.
Starved Philadelphia schools.
Crowded classrooms.
Thousands of layoffs.
PFT and PCAPS brought national attention to the crisis with television and newspaper ads,
Without guidance counselors, without
national media appearances, and the Full Funding Friday campaign.
It's not about politics. It's about the children and what we need to provide for them.
Governor Tom Corbett will release $45 million for Philadelphia.
As public pressure grew, Governor Corbett had no choice but to release the $45 million. In New Mexico, the statewide town halls led to the coalition's mission statement and Reclaim the Promise legislative agenda that were toured across the state, asking educators, community members, and parents to sign on.
The more people that come together, the more impact it will bring.
Over 11,000 petition signatures were collected.
And we are thrilled to be a part of a growing community coalition who are all coming together to reclaim the promise for New Mexico's public education.
We want priority for funding that goes directly to our school districts instead of to special projects. We want legislation that prioritizes teaching before testing. We also want a fair teacher evaluation. We need to take New Mexico back. Now let's get united and do this.
So that our children will not only dream their dreams, but achieve their dreams using the vision you have already launched.
In both Philadelphia and New Mexico, the fight continues. In Philadelphia, community and labor are keeping up the pressure for fair funding and the removal of the governor-appointed School Reform Commission. Governor Corbett's approval ratings have plummeted, with education issues being the largest factor for those rating him poorly. In New Mexico, the Senate has refused to confirm Hannah Skandera after contentious hearings, and pro-public education bills have been introduced in the state legislature, stopping Governor Martinez's agenda in its tracks. Her approval ratings have dropped 10 points since December. And the state Senate and House sent a budget to the governor that includes increased education funding, more local control through collaboration and collective bargaining, and across-the-board pay increases. While very different, these two affiliates embody the spirit of reclaiming the promise. By uniting with community and mobilizing and engaging members, they are coming up with solutions and pushing forward a positive vision for the future. By working together, we can win the fight to reclaim the promise for all children, all families, in all communities. Join the growing movement to reclaim the promise.